All right, as we've done fairly recently in the past, a whole bunch of people who are sponsoring, and one who's sponsoring it in memory of his parents, Nick Sandler, is Leili Nishmat Shmuel Aryeh ben Naftali Hertz, Nechama Badya bat Avram Yitzchak, and also in honor of our learning, may I make it home without the flat tire being a problem. All right, so sorry?
That flat tire.
Yeah, it'll be online. Everyone will know forever. All right, so generally, I have just kind of like a Torah idea that I want to share. I have a Torah idea that I want to share. There's like something that I like. This week, as I said, I have an agenda. And to explain to you what I mean, there's a fairly well-known Gemara. It's a little difficult to wrap your head around. It's in Masechet Shabbat. Right. Okay. It's in Masechet Shabbat, and it's a whole series of Gemarot. It's fairly well known, and it's basically all these Gemarot that are saying anyone who says that so and so sinned, they really is Eino Ela Toa. Right, like all these cases in the Torah or in Tanakh where it appears that a certain holy person sinned, they kind of say no, it really wasn't a sin. Right? I mean, like a couple of weeks ago we had Reuven that it says that he slept with Bilhah, and they say no, he didn't really sleep with her. Right? So there's a whole series of these. Right? The sons of Eli Cohen. So there's, maybe the most famous one is David HaMelech, right? The whole David and Bathsheba story, right? It says whoever says that David HaMelech sinned, Eino Ela Toa, and then it gives the conditional divorce and all these things to kind of justify why it wasn't really technically an Isur. And however we deal with those and whether or not we have to read it that way, that's something separate. But there's one part that I really like in it is that. Rav, and this is in Masechet Shabbat, Daf Nun Vav Amud Aleph, Rav actually says about Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, he says, you only said that because you're from Shevet Yehuda. Basically, you're trying to defend David HaMelech, not because it's true, but because, you have an agenda, basically. You're trying to protect the guy from your Shevet. You're a descendant from David HaMelech, so you're trying to protect him. So, with that in mind, I'm a Levi. And for a while I've been interested in kind of Torah about Shevat Levi and the person of Levi, and so tonight I have a very particular agenda. This is mostly I put this together. I had a few little discussions. A few people recommended things. Mostly my own idea. I wouldn't call it pshat, but there's a line I once heard in the name of Soloveitchik where he said about something. He said it's not pshat, but it's better than drash. I like what I came up with, but again, it's totally an agenda. What I'm going to attempt to do. We know that out of the 12 brothers, Yaakov's 12 sons, that Shimon and Levi are very much connected. We see them many times mentioned together. And what I want to try to do is I want to pin everything on Shimon and kind of get Levi off the hook. So my attempt, and ultimately, and as part of that, I'm not just making that up, because ultimately we know that Levi does become the tribe where the Kohanim come from, and they work in the Beit HaMikdash. Things do seem to turn out well for them. So basically what I want to deal with is, if Shimon and Levi were doing all these problematic things, how is it that Shevet Levi ends up being the good Shevet, and Shimon, for all intents and purposes in Tanakh, things are not so positive, and they, in many ways, almost like disappear. And then even in terms of Chazal, they view them more negatively. So, basically, if you start off with the story of Shimon and Levi, obviously the first time where it's mentioned is in Parshat Vayishlach. Please.
So, are we saying that, like right now, by looking at the characters of Shimon specifically and Levi specifically, we're going to decide why the entire tribe of Shimon, the entire tribe of Levi, are or not whatever happened throughout Jewish history and Jewish writings? In other words, I'm going to suggest that the actual Shimon and Levi, basically, I'm saying basically it's on the assumption that if Shevet Levi, the issue is, obviously, you could give like a biblical criticism issue to this, that would be, heresy. But the issue is that basically, all of a sudden in Sefer Shemot, Shevet Levi, literally from the beginning of Shemot, pretty much, you have Moshe and Aaron
they're coming from there, and you can say, okay, that doesn't really mean the whole Shevet is chosen, but ultimately, all of a sudden, from that point on, Levi and the Kohanim are a big deal. So, what I want to suggest
is... That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying more like, we saying because Shimon did something bad, the entire Shevet no longer is important, the entire Shevet is looked down bad. Because they did something bad.
Right, but not even necessarily in a cosmic sense, sort of almost in a certain sense of, a founding father sets a kind of course for how things go. Again, you'll see.
You'll find out more in a few minutes.
So, the first time that Shimon and Levi appear in the Torah, after their births, obviously, which we'll touch on slightly a little bit later, is in the story of Dinah and Shechem. Right, Dinah is kidnapped. According to many, or I think most commentators, she's raped. Others say she was seduced. Either way, it's not. She's not treated very well. No. Well, no, the Torah has a difference between the onus and mafata in terms of what you pay. I'm saying, I'm saying in terms of force. I'm saying rape is force. Seduction is, willing, but not, not moral willingness. Right. The Torah has two different terms for it. But, so in any case, the whole family is very upset. Yaakov's upset. His sons are upset, and they tell Shechem and Hamor they have to have a brit milah if they want, and then everyone will get married, and everything will be fine. And then on the, fine, they go and they do brit milah, and then on the third day, that's when all hell breaks loose, basically, right? Perek Lamed-Daled, Pasuk Chaf Hei, Vayhi Bayom HaShlishi, on the third day, B'yotam Koavim, the whole city's in pain. All the men have had brit milah. Vayikchu Shnei Bnei Yaakov, Shimon v'Levi, Achei Dinah Ish Charbo. The two sons of Yaakov, Shimon and Levi, the brothers of Dinah, they each took their sword. Vayavo al Ha'ir Betach. They came secure or certain to the city. V'hargu kol zachar, and they kill everybody, and they kill Hamor and Shechem, and they basically loot the entire city. So this is not the most auspicious start, and already, from this point forward, pretty much for the rest of the Sefer of Bereshit, Shimon and Levi are either directly or by implication, midrashically seen as kind of being very, very problematic, right? As we're going to see, it seems fairly clear that they were, we could actually even look there now. The next time, it's not direct, but again, we have to remember that they're referred to as Achei Dinah, right? The brothers of Dinah, which is already a little bit of a strange term, because she has 12 brothers, and even if you want to say full brothers, she has 6 of those. So there's this thing about being brothers, and then all of a sudden, the next time, in terms of brothers, the next time it doesn't work out so well when with Yosef, right? In Parshat Vayeshev, Yaakov sends Yosef out to the field after he's had the dreams, and the brothers hate his guts, and he's been telling on them, and he's looking for them, and the brothers see him, and it says Vayiru oto merachok. This commercial a little beat up. Vayiru oto merachok, b'terem yikrav alehem v'yinaklu oto lahamito. They plan to kill him. Vayomru ish el achiv, and a man said to his brother, Hine balach alamot hazeba, and ata lechu nahargehu. Now let's go kill him. Now, it doesn't say who they were, but the Midrash actually makes a case for who it must have been. Right? It makes a case that it must have been Shimon and Levi. And it figures it out based on logical deduction. It's not a slam dunk proof, but he says, there's certain things that we know. Right? So, there are 10 brothers who are there. Binyamin's not there yet. Then there's Yosef, so there's 10 brothers. Right? And just to set it up, so the 6 sons of Leah, the 2 sons of Bilhah, and the 2 sons of Zilpah. So they take as a given, and again, it's not an ironclad slam dunk proof, but I think it's a solid one, that the sons of the Shvachot were not treated as, full-fledged, not as full-fledged sons, but as full-fledged brothers. In other words, kind of like the full brothers, the ones who came from Rachel and Leah, the ones who were, were on a higher level, and therefore it suggests that the Bnei HaShifcha would not have been involved in anything that involves taking charge, anything that involves making a decision for all of them, and which I think makes sense. In terms of you think about it, that Rachel and Leah are really wives, the other ones are whatever you want to call them, concubines or whatever you want to call them. And then it says we know other things as well. It says we know that Reuven tried to save Yosef. We know that Yehuda also tried to prevent them from killing him, which leaves us now with only 4 brothers from Leah, and Shimon and Levi are the next 2. Are the 2 oldest. They would have been the ones to do it. And plus, you factor in the fact that Ish el Achiv, a man to his brother. Especially in light of the fact that they've already been referred to specifically as brothers, so it's generally assumed that, and not only from this, I mean, later on, which we'll touch on in a second, the brachot, that's why I'm doing this week, Parshat Vayechi, it's the end of Bereshit, everything's being wrapped up, Yaakov's on his deathbed, he gathers the sons together and he gives them brachot, some of them are kind of positive and nice, and some of them are not so nice, and there too, it seems, at least one way of reading what he says is that they, obviously he talks about what happened with Shechem, but he also seems to possibly also say to them, you sold Yosef. So between all that, again, it's not a slam dunk, it doesn't actually say the name Shimon and Levi, but I think you can make a fairly strong case that it makes sense that it was them. Right? And in fact, right, if we look at this week's parasha, in terms of Parshat Vayechi, so things start off kind of bad. I mean, the first couple people who get brachot, it's kind of not so good. It starts off with Reuven, which makes sense because Reuven is it's going in birth order. Reuven is the Bechor, right? And as the Bechor, what should he have gotten? He should have gotten everything, right? In other words, if we talk about like one tribe is going to be the leaders, the kings, the priests, double portion, whatever it is you want to say, it should be Reuven. But Yaakov basically says to him, "You messed up. You did something with my bed, okay?" Pshat is that he slept with Bilhah, or Gemara says he didn't. He switched the beds, whatever you want to say. But Yaakov says to him, "Sorry, you're out. You should have been the Bechor, but you're basically very unstable. Pachaz kamayim. You're just you act without thinking. You're too rash. Sorry. Thanks for playing." Again, not much of a bracha. Imagine if you go to a reading of a will, and like the first thing is you're getting nothing because you stink. It's kind of disappointing. And then it comes to Shimon and Levi, and again, Shimon. And here's what it says over here. And again, so much so that they're linked together that they're getting a bracha together. It's not even Shimon gets a bracha and Levi, but it's together. Shimon v'Levi achim, right? Shimon and Levi are brothers. And again, it's interesting. On the one hand, they're Achei Dina. On the other hand, and they had a lot of mercy for her. And not only mercy, but care. Her pain was their pain. On the other hand, by Yosef, they're also brothers, and they didn't have the slightest feeling of, anything. Right. Understood. But, even so, it would make sense that they would love Dinah more. It wouldn't make sense that they would, love one and try to kill the other. It's pretty opposite extremes. I hear.
They're just like killing.
Right. So Shimon and Levi Achim Klei Chamas Mecheroteim. They have these, weapons of destruction. Besodam al Tavot Nafshi. I shouldn't be joined with them. Ki ba'arpam hargu ish. Because in their anger they killed a man, which maybe seems to be talking about Shechem. Ubiritzonam, and with their will ikru shor. Yosef is known as, he's known as he's compared to an ox. So maybe that might be talking about Yosef. Arur apam ki az, their anger is cursed because it's fierce. Ba'avratam ki kashata, and basically another poetic way of saying they're really, really, angry. Achalkem b'Yaakov, I'm going to disperse them. I'm going to break them up among Yaakov, afitzem b'Yisrael, and I'm going to spread them out in Israel. Right? Basically, he's going to keep them separate. Right? In other words, basically what he's saying is, you guys are achim. When you're together, bad things happen, and therefore, I'm just going to separate you, right? It's like the 2 kids in class, who are just always, it's a disaster area to have them sitting next to each other. You've moved to opposite corners of the room. Hopefully they won't, at least be able to team up. So we see again, Shimon and Levi are both on this collision course for being these kind of like very violent and emotional and, that's the thing. If Reuven's not going to be the king because he's a little too unstable, doesn't make the best decisions. Certainly Shimon and Levi. You can't have people who, you don't want to have your leader being someone who's just, bloodthirsty and wants to kill everyone. Although it seems to work for certain countries. And then, then we move to Yehuda, and all of a sudden Yehuda, you're going to be the king. So, again, if you look at the story up until now, Shimon and Levi, they're both on this collision course. They're both basically been told there's a problem. They're going to be broken up. And in fact, I mean, that's, even on a pshat level, that's what happens. I mean, Shevet Levi does not have their own nachala. They have 42 Arei Leviah spread out throughout, the entire country. Shevet Shimon is surrounded by Yehuda. I mean, it says in Sefer Yoshua that their piece of land is surrounded by, so again, it's kind of like they're being fenced off by a stronger Shevet. Neither of them seem to be getting very much praise. All of a sudden, we move to the end of the Torah, and just like Yaakov gives brachot at the end, Moshe Rabbeinu, right at the end of his order bracha, right before he dies, also gives brachot. This time, rather than to individual people, he gives it to Shvatim. And here, there's two things to note. One is that all the bracha for Shevet Levi is very, very positive. And two is that Shimon does not even have a bracha. It's not even mentioned over here. Right? It says, Ul Levi Amar Tumecha v'urecha le'ish chasidecha, the Urim v'Tumim, talking about the Kohen Gadol, Asher Nisito b'masat riveu al meriva, talking about Aharon, Haomer la'aviv u'limo lo re'itiv. He says about his father and mother. We'll see what this is talking about. I don't see them. That achiv lo hikir, and he didn't recognize his brother. We'll see that's significant. Banav lo yadan, he doesn't know his children. Ki shamru imartecha bitcha yinsori. He kept your word, God. Right? Yoru mishpatecha liYaakov v'toratcha liYisrael. They're going to teach your statutes to the Jewish people and your Torah to Israel. Yasom Torah ba'pecha. Right? They're going to have korbanot. Baruch Hashem chelo. Okay, all very, very positive things. Shimon is out of the picture here. Levi is all of a sudden things are going really well. So the question is, how do you get from Shimon and Levi? And again, that's the thing. Yaakov's brachot are understood not just as, here's what's going to happen to you, but, as you were asking before, basically, here's your destiny as a tribe. He's saying, it's not just saying Yehuda is going to be the leader of the family, but that the tribe of Yehuda is going to be the ones who rule. Shevet Dan, we're talking about. So, what changed? So, there's basically, I think there's a fairly simple, what I'd call, pshat approach over here. The simple pshat approach, and this is going to connect to what we said, that they don't recognize their family, they don't recognize their brother, is that in Parshat Ki Tisa, when there's the Chet HaEgel, we know Moshe's up on Har Sinai, and meanwhile they think he's dead, and they say to Aaron, Moshe's dead, you have to help us, Chet HaEgel, right? And Moshe comes down, and Perek Lamed Daled, Perek Lamed Bet, Pasuk Chavav. 1 second, Parshat Ki Tisa. There we go. And Moshe's very upset. He speaks to Aaron, and then Vayamod Moshe B'shar HaMachaneh. He stands in the gate of the camp. Vayomer Mila Hashem Elai. Who's for God to come to me? V'yesvu alav kol b'nei Levi. And all of Shevet Levi gathers, and they gather to him. Vayomer Koamar Hashem Elkei Yisrael Simu ish charbo al yirecho. Take your sword and go through the entire camp. V'hirgu ish et achiv v'ish et re'eu v'ish et krovo. Kill everyone who sinned. Okay, and so you could say just on a simple level, killing is usually not a good thing, but if maybe Levi, Shimon and Levi have this kind of like bloodlust. At least, it's like the Gemara talks about, if you have like the desire to spill blood, do it in a kosher way. So it seems you could just say, okay, Levi made the decision right here that they're going to be the people of God. Mila Hashem Elai. Levi joins up, right? And just 1 second, just like the bracha from Moshe says, they don't care about family. Even achiv, they're willing to kill people who are, maybe literally their half brothers or from other shvatim. So you could just say very simply, they made the choice to be on the side of God. And from that point forward, they're chosen.
They made the choice to follow their tribal leader Moshe, who came back and said, "Oh, guys, come to me." And then they went to literally who ran Levi? You could say Aaron, but who had the real power? Moshe was something.
I hear that, but again, he doesn't. But again, one thing that's clear though is It doesn't say that he goes to Shevet Levi and says, he says, "Join me."
Come join me.
No, but he says Mila Hashem. Again, the pasuk seems to be that he's speaking to Bnei Israel as a whole. it doesn't seem to be that he's speaking to Shevet Levi. It seems that they willingly make a choice. So you could
mean that like Shevet Levi made the choice because they were so pious. They made the choice because they saw their leader.
Okay, but certainly it's understood, and it's certainly in light of the brachot later on that Moshe gives them that that's a positive thing, that they put loyalty to God over family loyalty. And you could even say you could even say that this is a tikkun for what they did before. Like, in other words, beforehand they placed family over morality when they killed Shechem, and now they're placing God over family. But I'm going to argue anyway for a number of reasons. I'm going to say that this is not really the only thing, and again, I'm going to bring it back, and I'm going to say that actually the man Levi actually does things that shows that he's actually changing, and that he's someone who's way to have them coming from him. Because obviously, you can talk about Moshe and Aaron. Moshe is obviously from Shevet Levi. Obviously, so is Aaron. He becomes the Kohen. You could say that it's just they happen to have been chosen. It wasn't that their Shevet was important. It's only later on that Levi becomes important. But I'm going to argue otherwise. So, one of my favorite 20th century rabbis. I don't think I ever met him or saw him. His name is Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. He died when I was a sophomore in high school. It's Rosh Yeshiva Torah Vadas, which is somewhere in Brooklyn, I don't know. And he was actually pretty interesting because he was, many times Rosh Yeshiva are, Gemara and Halacha only, at least in the, in the Litvish black hat world. He was a big Tanakh guy. He was really, very, very fascinating. So he has a whole approach that he takes over here. Basically, and again, it's based on on different midrashim, which we're going to touch on before I give my own kind of idea of what's going to happen. Right? He says again, you have Shimon and Levi. They're called Achei Dinah, right? Why are they called Achei Dinah? Because again, as he puts it, her pain was their pain, right? Everyone was upset. Yaakov's upset. The other brothers are upset. Shimon and Levi are so upset with what happened to her that it's like their own pain. Like literally, it's like it hurts them, and therefore they lash out. So what Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky points out is that yes, Yaakov's upset, but on the other hand, he recognizes that in their anger, there's a kernel of something good underneath it. Right? In other words, he says, if you note, it's aror apam kiaz. He curses their anger, but again, but there's something positive within them. Right? In fact, right, when it says Achal ken b'Yaakov v'afisem b'Yisrael, I'm going to divide them. Right? What does Rashi say? He says, why are they going to be divided? They're going to be the teachers of Torah. Right? So, now, you could say, unless you've been one, you could say that teaching Torah is actually a positive thing. It's not actually part of, a curse that Yaakov's giving to the brothers. So, I always have to get in a little bit. But it's something positive. And Kamenetsky says, I don't get it. Yaakov's mad. Why is he giving them this bracha? Because he's saying, someone who's going to teach Torah, someone who's going to have this midah, of caring about someone so much like it's their own, will actually be very, good at teaching and helping someone because he wants them to succeed. And he says, in fact, so that's very nice. And then again, he's going based on midrashim over here. The only problem is, again, based on what he says, if you look at the end, when Moshe gives the brachot in Pizora Bracha, Yoram Mishpatecha Yaakov Torah Chal Yisrael, who's going to be teacher of Torah? Only Shevet Levi. So again, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky asks our question: what happened? Shimon and Levi get the same bracha. They act together. They do wrong by Shechem. They do wrong by Yosef. And then all of a sudden, but still Yaakov sees something positive in them, and yet only Levi seems to fulfill it. What happens? So Rav Yaakov quotes a very, very famous midrash. Right, it's actually found in Shemot Rabbah. We've all heard this. I remember when I taught this for the first time. Right, there's a very, very famous midrash that Bnei Levi, this is from one of the sponsors, thank you, David Wachtel. Bnei Levi, they were actually, Levi, when they were in Mitzrayim, right? How was Moshe able to come and go and speak to Paro? Why weren't they slaves? Right, what does the midrash say?
He wasn't slaves?
Shevet Levi were not slaves, right? It says...
they didn't sign up for the work.
Right. Classic idea, okay. Amar Yeshua ben Levi, Shifto shel Levi, Panoi hayav me'avodat parach. They were free. Amar lehem Paro, b'shvil she'atem pnuyim, atem omrim, nelchav nizbachal Elokeinu. Because you have nothing to do, that's why you're giving this sacrifice. And then there's, of course, the famous midrash. Why were they free? What were they doing while everybody else was working?
Torah.
They were learning Torah. Okay, they were learning Torah, and again, so Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky suggests over here that what's it called? That because Shevet Levi learned Torah, they basically had this trait, this kana'ut, this zealousness, and basically they filtered it through the lens of Torah. That in other words, there was something positive there. To be someone who's fierce in the service of God is at least potentially a positive thing. And once Levi learned Torah, so things ended up going well for them. Things ended up turning out, now they're the ones who are going to teach Torah, as opposed to Shimon, who they don't have that. Again, part of the difficulty is, even if we assume that we take this midrash as a little midrash, why should Shimon be punished for the fact that they weren't singled out to learn Torah? I mean, it still kind of makes it sort of random. And look, the truth is, there's a lot of nice stuff. Rav Yuval Sherlow, who's a Rav in Eretz Yisrael today, he points out that when it goes through in this week's parasha, like it goes through all the 70 or really 69 people who came down to Mitzrayim, right? One of the children of Shimon is Shaul ben HaKna'anit. It's not clear who that is. Shaul, the daughter of the Canaanite. So some say it's really Dinah, that he actually married Dinah because no one wanted to marry her afterwards. But the simple reading is that he was married to someone from Canaan. Right? What do we know about Canaan? Right? Right? That it's like they're a cursed nation. Right? Abraham and Yitzhak send their sons away so that they won't have to marry Benot Canaan.
Isn't it not just one nation? It's several.
Yeah, but I'm saying, but it's the locals basically. So Yuval Sherlow points out that that when it says that Shimon had a daughter with someone from one of the Canaanim, we see already that Shimon is already a little bit of a problematic character. That he's the first of the family who's kind of marrying someone who he shouldn't. And interestingly, and we're going to touch on this in a second, the next real time that we hear about Shevet Shimon doing anything, anyone remember where that is?
After what?
Basically after the Shvatim, after Yetziat Mitzrayim. Like when does Shimon play?
When they killed that, when they go into that tent and they kill the.
Right. Pinchas, excellent. Right. So,
he's of Shevet Shimon.
Right. Well, right. Yeah. Well, not Pinchas, but Zimri. Right. So at the end of Parshat Balak, Bnei Israel start to engage in immoral sexual relations, and Zimri ben Salu, Nasi Beit Av Shimoni, he's the head of the Shevet. He goes and he takes a Midianite woman, and in front of everybody. And Pinchas gets up and takes a spear and invents shish kebab right through the two of them, and they're finished. Right, and interestingly, and this really backs up what Rav Yuval Sherlow says. It actually says that Zimri ben Salu, it's my bar mitzvah parsha, I should know how to pronounce it, is actually one of his other names is Shaul ben HaKna'anit. So it's kind of connecting these two things of Shimon having this inappropriate wife, and then his descendant having this inappropriate sexual relationship, which ends up being a big problem. 24,000 people from Shevet Shimon are killed out. And not only that, it's interesting, like if you're going to say that they were upset with what happened to Dinah, right, what could they say? They could say, sexual immorality, we can't stand for that. And yet what is the leader of Shevet Shimon doing later on? Engaging in the ultimate act of sexual immorality. And of course, who kills him? Pinchas from Shevet Levi. So again, you have this idea, again, you do see that Shevet Shimon, things don't go so well, and then at the end that happens. But again, still, I kind of, the side of me that everything has to be fair, is kind of bothered by, again, so even if you take literally that Shevet Levi learned Torah Mitzrayim, whatever that means before Torah, but whatever it is they did, why should Shevet Shimon, they just didn't have a chance. I mean, it still seems random. So with that in mind, now we finally going to come to my theory. And again, I'm not going to make the case that this is pshat, but I think it's an interesting approach. Although again, as I said, I clearly have an agenda. I'm trying to, protect my great grandfather Levi. So, here we go. So the first thing I want to do is that if you look in Parshat Vayetze, when the sons of Yaakov are born, right, it goes through all the names, right, and names in the Torah almost always are significant.
And even when they don't, it's not so clear, Chazal will come up with midrashim about them, come up with readings. But especially with the sons of Yaakov, you see the name, however you want to say it. Chazal talk about that they were named Beruach HaKodesh, but the names always have, significance for who they were as a person. Not just in terms of they happen to have just gotten this name, but it really tells who they are. For example, here's a classic example. There's a sefer called Torah Shlema, which is an unbelievable sefer. Ironically, it's actually not Shalem. It was a mess. Literally it goes through pretty much like every midrash you could find on every single pasuk. And he only got through Sefer Bamidbar before he died, but it's a pretty, it's a pretty amazing sefer. So take for example Shevet Yehuda, right? What does Yehuda mean? Right, what does Leah say? Right, thanks. Right, it's a combination thanks / to admit, which are really kind of together, right? Like when you thank someone, you're admitting that they've done something for you, right? And so Leah's fourth son, Vatar Od Vatele Ben Vatomer Hapa'am Oder Hashem. This time I'm going to thank God. Al Kain Karashamo Yehuda. Okay, and therefore she names him Yehuda. Okay. Now the Midrash points out, right, later on, when Yaakov gives the bracha, again in this week's parsha, Nechnas Yehuda vil Yaakov v'kilso Yehuda ata yoducha achicha. Your brothers will admit to you, right? Why? Ata b'shimcha hodata imecha, right? Your mother admitted or gave thanks when it came to your name, and not only that, you yourself also admitted, right? When did Yehuda admit that he was wrong? When did he acknowledge that he had done something wrong? With Tamar, right? Basically he says, take Tamar out. It looks like Tamar's had to sleep with someone, become pregnant from someone she's not allowed to. And, Hotio Avatisaref, we're going to kill her. And then she says, by the way, if anyone knows who these 3 items belong to, he's the one who got me pregnant, and it's Yehuda. And he says, Tzad Kami Meni, he admits it. So again, we see very, very clear over here, and not only do you have Leah and do you have Yehuda being the one who admits it, but you also have David HaMelech, right? By Bathsheba, which we mentioned before, right? When Natan HaNavi comes to him and says Ata Ha'ish, right? Unlike Shaul, who was the previous king, David says Chatati. He admits it. So again, we see that the names really say something about who the person is. So I'm going to suggest that the same thing is true when it comes to Shimon and Levi, right? Obviously Shimon, right? What is the shoresh of Shimon's name?
Shomaya.
Right. Vatar od vateled ben vatomar ki shama Hashem ki snua anochi. God has heard that I am hated. Vayiten li gam et zev tikra Shemo Shimon, and therefore she called him Shimon. So I'm going to suggest, and again, I don't have a midrash to back this part up, although I'll have one for Levi. I'm going to suggest that Shimon's midah, remember, it's Shimon and Levi are brothers, so I want to suggest that Shimon is the ringleader. Levi is the one who follows along, which again, first of all, Shimon is older, okay, for whatever that's worth, but that the name Shimon, that he's the one who is listened to. Okay, that's what I'm suggesting on this name. I don't have any proof other than his name and what we're going to see later on.
It could work both ways. You could also be like, he's the one listening.
Right. True. I thought about that 100%. But I'm saying so. But therefore, remember, first of all, I do have an agenda, and second of all, I do have something more to back me up in terms of the other side with Levi. So I think it works. Next, we come to Levi, and here I was happy to find a midrash that actually backs me up over here. It says, "Vatar od vateled ben, third son, vatomer ata hapa'am yilaveh ishi elai. This time, my husband will accompany me." Whatever that means, why she'll accompany her now. Ki yaladati lo shlosha banim, because I've given birth to 3 sons. Al kain kara shemo Levi. Now there's 2 things to note over here. Number 1 is by every other son it either says Vatikra, and she called him, or it says Vayikra, and he called him. Either the mother names or Yaakov names. Here, and this is picked up on, this is not my own idea, it says Al Kain Kara Shemo. Therefore his name was called. It seems like, even though Leah makes this statement, now my husband will join me, that somehow he's called this, and the different midrashim suggest that either God himself gave him the name, or a malach gave him the name, that again, that there was something inherent in him, lover, right, like malava, malka is to accompany, he's the one who accompanies, right, and again, that's why I want to make the case that he's the one who joins along. Shimon is the one who is listened to. He's the ringleader, and Levi is a joiner. He's someone who kind of attaches himself to others, right? And I was actually right. And here's one midrash. It's actually from Bereshit Rabbah. Rabbi Yudan Amar Levi ze atid lavot et habanim laviam shabashamayim. He's going to accompany his brothers, bring them closer to their Father in heaven. Right. So again, he has this trait of Livia, of being one who accompanies, of joining in. So you have Shimon, who again, who I'm arguing is the one who is listened to, and you have Levi, who is just he's a joiner, he's a follower, and which again can be both good and bad, right? You know, if you follow the wrong people, you get into trouble. If you join up with the right people, it's good for you, right? You know, oil rasha, oil l'shcheno, tov l'tzadik, tov l'shcheno.
That doesn't work with the theory that only Shebet and Levi were the ones who stood up during Hadegel. Also, they were the only ones who studied Torah, and also in house was the only one who stood up and went to go kill a person.
Right. Well, so I'll tell you. I mean, look again. The learn Torah part, I don't have such a problem with it because again, you know, it's midrash. I mean, I don't have to. The joining together with Moshe. I mean, I think you could say that's the ultimate. I mean, they're joiners. He says Mila Hashem Elai, and this time they join with the right one. Pinchas. Okay, I hear it. I hear you with Pinchas. You know, if I wanted to, I could probably give a forced answer, but I'll leave. You know, I'll leave that as a fair objection. Okay, so far, you know, so far we have this in terms of the name, and again, it's not just that she chooses the name; it seems to be chosen either by God or by the Malach. Al-Kain Kara Shemo. Okay, so there's something definitely significant about his name. He's a joiner. Shimon is the one who's listened to. Now, all of a sudden now we come to Perek Lamed Zayin, Pasuk Yud Tet, right? And again, this is back to when they sell Yosef. And here's the point I made before, right? What does it say about them? Vayomru ish el achiv. So one says to his brother, who again, the Midrash already is saying this is Shimon and Levi. Hinei bal hal chalamot hazeh v'ata lechu v'nahargei. Let us go and kill him. So if we assume that this is Shimon and Levi, one is speaking and one is.
But isn't ish le'achiv like a common term, Tanakh, not just specifically to talk about two single specific people, but to a group, each is talking to another?
Right, but the Midrash picks up on, again, as I said, on a couple of things. First of all, they've already gotten this term of Achim. Later on, they're called Achim by Yaakov himself. They do seem to be at least one reading of the brachot of Yaakov, or that they're the ones who did sell Yosef. And as we're going to see, there does seem to be, which we're actually going to get to in 1 second, there actually does seem to be, I'm going to get to it right now. There does seem to actually be an indication that Shimon is the guilty one, right? And I thought this was interesting. If you look, this is 2 weeks ago, the Parshat Miketz, right? They're standing before Yosef, and he's basically putting them through the ringer, and you guys are lying, and you're spies, right? And what happens? They start to get very upset. Vayomru ish el achiv. One says to his brother, we don't know who this is yet. Okay, I mean, maybe we could make a case. Okay, we don't know. No, fine. Vayomru ish el achiv, aval ashemim anachnu. We're guilty. Al achinu asher ra'inu tzarat nafsho, b'itchananu elenu v'lo shamanu. Okay, right? You know, we heard his cries, and again, like, it's hard for me to imagine. You can see that the word shomea comes up at least 3 times right here. It's hard to me to imagine that this is not suggesting something about Shimon. Right? Okay, right? Lo shamanu. We didn't listen. Right? You know, you want to say Shimon's supposed to be a listener. We didn't listen. Vayan Ruvain otam lemor halo amarti alechem lemor al techatu bayeled. Ruvain says, didn't I tell you not to sin? V'lo shamatem. Again, you didn't listen. Okay? V'heim lo yadu ki shomea Yosef ki ha melitz. Again, I don't have a proof for this. but it seems awfully strong to me that it's talking about Shimon, especially in terms of the next pasuk. Vayisov me'alehem vayef. So they don't know that Yosef actually understands what they're saying. He hears them maybe beginning to do a little bit of tshuva. Vayashav eleim v'yidaber eleim v'yikach mitam et Shimon v'yasor oto leineim. And he locks up Shimon. He has to pick one brother, and he locks up Shimon. And again, this is right after the word shomea has just been used 3 times. And again, the Midrash picks up on this, on this saying, look, okay, fine, he said he's going to keep one brother, but why is it that he's going to, out of all the brothers he could take, why is it that he would specifically lock them up? First of all, the Midrash says, Vayomru ish alachiv zeu Shimon v'Levi. Right? Okay, so that's our Midrash. And then over here, when he locks it up, Vayikach mitam et Shimon, it says in the Tanchuma, Amar Asreini v'hashlicheni labor afani oseroto. Here's Midah Keneged Midah. Shimon said, throw me into the pit, so I'm going to lock him up now, Midah Keneged Midah. So again, it's not a slam dunk proof, but again, he's out of 10 brothers he could choose, he's choosing Shimon, he's splitting them up, which again, sort of like what Yaakov says later on, you don't want Shimon and Levi together. It's a bad mix. Lo shamanu, lo shamatem, shama Yosef. And then it says, he lights up Shimon. Again, it seems to be, I think it makes a fairly good case that Shimon is the ringleader over here. I mean, I even saw there's another midrash that actually says that when Yosef was in the pit, Shimon said, "Let's throw a rock on him." But either way, so Chazal certainly seem to be picking up on the idea of him being the ringleader. Not only that, we know that, right? What does Yosef do when he sends the brothers away? All the silver that they brought to pay for the wheat, he puts back in their bags, and then they find it. Right, and this was actually suggested to me by a friend of mine in Pesach. His name is Rabbi Dani Besser. I thought this was a nice idea. It says, "Vayiftach echad et sako," right? And the one doesn't say "and one." It says "and the one," which is a strange language. He opens up his bag to give food to his donkey, and then he sees his money, and he says, "Inehu b'fiam tachto," and he sees that the silver's there, and he says to his brothers, "It's been returned." It's all in my bag, and they all get very upset. And who is this person? Ha'echad, says the Midrash, Ze Levi shehu miyuchad lamakom. So you could say he's the one who is, singular in terms of Hashem, or you could say more simply, you could say again, right? Rashi actually says this over here, right? Vayivtach echad hu Levi shenishar yachid Shimon ben Zugo. Right? Why is he the one? He's missing his partner in crime, Shimon, who's been locked up.
Just call him Ben Zug.
Not in a marriage sense, in a partner sense, in a partnership. Again, they've been Shimon al.
Ben Zug.
Ben Zug is like a.
Ben Zug, yes, Bat Zug,
It's like a partner. I mean, it's not. It could mean a couple that are going out, but here it means that they're partners.
I just know the phrase because there's the phrase that each Zug is said in the Shema.
Right, yeah, no, but clearly here it's being used in the sense that they're partners. But again, here you have a case. a number of midrashim that are again suggesting that Shimon is the one who did the selling, and Levi is even being put on the spot now, where he's now by himself. He doesn't have Shimon to and he's the one who finds, he's the one who finds the money. And again, maybe he starts to be meharher b'tshuva a little bit. He starts to think, maybe I did something wrong over here. Maybe I'm the one who's guilty. So this to me, and then Rabbi Besser suggested this to me, and by the way, he's actually the nephew of the Flatbush Rabbi Besser, who I just saw here. Rabbi Dani Besser, who's the guy who is a friend of mine who lives in Passaic, he just made a bar mitzvah for his son this past Shabbat, and Flatbush Rabbi Besser was there. I hadn't seen him in a while. I went over and said hello. But in any case, so I'm suggesting again, Shimon is the guilty one. He's the one who people listen to. Levi is the joiner. He was the one, and this is maybe even puts him on the path of tshuva when he's the one who starts to see that they were guilty and that they're being punished, and he starts to regret it. And I have a few more, proofs for where, or at least, suggestions to back up what I'm saying. How do we see that he did tshuva? Right. First of all, we see, right, it says, why did Yosef died younger than the other brothers. He was only 110. Why did he die than the other brothers? Midrash says he was punished because he, heard them referring to his father as, Avdecha, Avinu, your servant, our father, 10 times, and he didn't protest. So he lost 10 years of his life. He should have lived to be 120. He only lived to be 110. Fine. But, we see that the length of their lives were considered to be, based on who they were. And who lives the longest out of any of the brothers? Levi, right? We know in Sefer Shmo, when it lists the lineage of Moshe and Aaron, it says that Levi lived to be 137. Right? So Levi lives the longest. And not only that, but again, my suggestion that Levi is the one who kind of joins, who can, in a certain sense, can kind of join up in a positive sense. It says that until Levi died, Bnei Israel did not become slaves, right? We know that they become slaves, paru v'yishritzu, they became bug-like, they kind of start to assimilate, there's problems. Levi is until he dies, his effect is felt on them. Again, he's someone who potentially can lead you in a positive way. So if, as Yaakov said, and then Moshe, follows up later on, teacher of Torah, that seems to be Levi. And in fact, so you have the idea of him being a teacher of Torah. You have the Kohanim, whose job is to bring people close to Hashem, right? The whole idea, he's the one who brings about tshuva for the people, right? What do we know about Aaron HaKohen, who's also a descendant? Ohev Shalom, Barodev Shalom, right? Karvan the Torah. Again, he's the joiner. He's the one who cares about people. He joins up and helps them. And not only that, you have the Ir Miklat, right? If someone killed Bishogeg, which again we always translate it as accident, it really means negligence. They weren't careful. They don't value life enough. They have to run to an Ir Miklat. Right, and it says, who is it whose job is to protect them, to help them? The Leviim, right? The Leviim, there were 6 Arei Miklat, but any of the 42 Arei Leviah also counted as an Ir Miklat. And clearly the hope was that by being around the Leviim, by being joined, Lovab, with the Leviim, they could, help you become a more caring, person when it comes to life. Right, and it's almost like it's almost like a tikkun for what they did wrong. Right, they didn't value life enough. They killed all the people of Shem. They were going to go along with killing Yosef. Now they're helping people learn about the value of life. Right, and again, it makes it very, very clear, right? In Masechet Yomah, Daf Chavav Amud Aleph, it says, "Ein shchiach Talmid Chacham Moreh Horaot." It's not common to find a Talmid Chacham who, basically, teaches Torah or says over halacha. Ella Mishevet Levi u'Mishevet Yisachar. Okay, forgetting about what Yisachar has to do with this, but again, Shevet Levi are the ones who are going to teach Torah. So even though Shimon, right, and also, what is it? Achal Kem B'Yakov. So they have to go around. They have to collect Trumot and Masrot. Right? Yes, they're going to be divided, but again, they're, right? What does Hashem even say about them? He says, why do they get Trumot and Masrot? They're my chelek. Right? They're connected to God. Again, Levi, they join with. Right? But what does it say about Shimon? As I told my wife before, I was actually happy. I think when I was teaching at MTA, I think this is where I got this. I don't know where else I could have gotten it. It was a YU library book and I didn't steal it. Although now that I mention it, I do have some books from Flappers that I still owe them. But I picked this up. I think it was like one of these, the binding's falling off. It's called Yalkut Shimoni. It's only on, this is only on Nach. I picked it up. I don't know, I always use Sfarim. I've never used it before. I just never knew anything here that I needed to look up. But I saw that there's a midrash about Shimon. And here, what does it say? 1 second. Mikol Hashvatim Yatzu Shoftim Umelachim. From all the tribes came out either judges or kings. Shevet Levi Lo. But not, I'm sorry, that was a Freudian slip. Shevet Shimon Lo. I'm sorry, there's a mark that I thought was a comma. Shevet Levi Lo Kam Lo Shofet V'Lo Melech Bishvil Hachet She'asa Zimri B'Shvatim. Right, because of the sin that Zimri did with the against the other Shvatim. So again, here we have Shimon is also, he's not going to be he's not going to, even though he's going to be spread out it's not going to be in a positive way, right? I mean, he's not going to be a judge. He's not going to seemingly be a teacher of Torah. He's going to be, and so what is he going to be? If you look in Bereshit Rabbah, Parshat Tzadichet, I guess, I don't know, Midrash, I don't know what to call it. Here it says, Achal Kim Yaakov, Zeh Shifto Shel Levi, Ani Chelkecha v'Nachlatecha. Right? What does God say? I am your, right? Why don't you get land? Because I, God, am your portion and your inheritance. V'afitzem b'Yisrael, and I'll divide them up in Israel. Zeh Shifto Shel Shimon. This is referring to Shimon. Hada Amra Ruban Shel Aniyim Shevet Shimon Hayu. Right? How are they spread out? Why do they have to go all over the country? Because they're the poor people. Again, very, very, very clear that there's a division that occurs midrashically, and I think even in terms of psukim, in terms of Pinchas versus Zimri, in terms of the brachot later on, that even though Shimon and Levi were these brothers, and they were these brothers who seemed to do things wrong, that again the blame seems to go on Shimon, right? We see that he's the one who was put into jail by Yosef. And again, that's why I'm suggesting his name. You're right. I mean, Shomer could be both. You could be a listener, or you could be someone who gets people to listen. But again, as the psukim say that we saw before, velo shamanu, velo shamatem. Right? Again, he's not someone who listens. He's one who kind of pushes his own will. He's very, very strong-willed, and thus, even though he maybe has this potentially good trait that he cared a lot about Dinah, but he doesn't really, he never really changes. Whereas Levi, who is the Loveh, is the one who always joins up with them, who himself got the opportunity to do tshuva when he started to see that things weren't going well. Maybe even Yaakov's brachot maybe even had an effect on him. He hears what Yaakov is saying about him. He's lumping him with Shimon, and maybe even afterwards for the rest of his life he does tshuva. We said that we saw that he lives the longest out of the brothers. He keeps them from sinning. Again, I don't know if I've built a case that if this was a court of law or a court of absolute pshat, that I could get Levi off, and I could get make him the unwitting accomplice to Shimon, who was the more of the cold-blooded killer. But at least I think that I hope I've at least been melamed zchut for him, and that maybe on some level it's a possibility to look at him in a more positive way in these stories.